Welcome to Beat TV. We're on the show floor of NAB today in Las Vegas at the glamorous convention center. My name is Ashley Swartz. I've been fortunate enough to be asked to be your guest host today. We've got a pretty great lineup of guests, which we'll get to here in a moment, but we wanted to start by thanking Livestream, Teradek, Andy from Beat, and join us in the show and the conversation with #BeatShow. So we're going to start today with Nancy Hill, who is from the 4As, and I'm just going to welcome Nancy. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here, Ashley.
We're going to start with Nancy, just tell me a little bit about the 4As, what you do, why you're here, and
the 4A stands for the American Association of Advertising Agencies. We represent all of the advertising agencies in the U.S. In virtually every space, whether it's media or digital or creative or social. I think about 80% of all media that's either creative or placed in the United States is represented by our membership. Okay. So that's who we are.
All right. So there's a lot of interesting things happening at NAB this week. A lot of announcements. I think today one of the things that struck me and I felt was quite timely, and was also a topic of conversation, the panel I participated in a bit ago, was the fact that AOL announced today that they're going to begin selling online media using a GRP rating system that is they've partnered with Nielsen and a few other folks to develop. And I think that is, that's quite interesting to me, because my point of origin when we first planned this show a few days ago was that we would talk about, what does video mean for broadcasters, right? And how is that going to affect share shift? You walk around the show floor and you can see there's a heck of a lot of money in legacy broadcasting.
Right.
And I would love to start with, if you could tell me a little bit about your stakeholders and the members of the 4As and what you've seen in the last 12 months and the big changes are, and then why you're here to to look at Ad ID and what's happening there.
Well, there's a lot of different ways that you could have this conversation. So let's start with the announcement with AOL and GRP. I think for many years there's been this search for the holy grail of currency, and how each component of the video system, whether that's broadcast or online, can be measured one against the other, because up until now there's really been no way of doing that. I think the announcement that you saw from AOL and Nielsen this morning is a step in that direction. I'm not so sure that everybody's going to follow in that direction, but I do think that that's what they're trying to do, is come up with an apples to apples way of comparing the media from one to another. There's a lot of initiatives underway. You and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Some of the legacy systems don't really want some of these initiatives to really take fold, but there are people out there that know that we have to get to a place where each medium and each part of the ecosystem can be measured against each other, so that we can make decisions in terms of how the ad dollars are going to be spent, which is where our members come in, because they're the ones who have to advise their clients in terms of how they're going to shift their dollars from one place to another, whether that's from video to online or whether that's from video to online video. And those are not easy decisions to make right now when you don't have a common currency.
Well, I think one of the things that's so interesting to me in the AOL announcement is that, forget what's happening on the legacy infrastructure side with operators and MSOs. There are disruptions happening, there are enablers. We're going to have Black Arrow on today, those that are trying to take television today and broadcast traditional advertising and make it more digital, right? And allow for dynamic ad insertion. A big talk, now, and on the panel I was on, was about addressable and advanced advertising and targetability.
Right.
I want you to talk about Ad ID, because that is bringing, metadata and data to allow for better monitoring and tracking of what is traditional television advertising. But then you've got AOL, one of the, the largest media companies in the world, saying today they're going to start using soft metrics of television to sell where they're putting their biggest investment dollars, which is in video. And my head's just kind of spinning going, I don't get it. So
you mentioned at the very beginning that dynamic insertion is one of the things that people need to get to. One of the things that Ad ID, which for those who don't know what Ad ID is, it's actually, think of it originally as the digital replacement for an ISKI code, but now it's really a digital slate that carries with it a ton of metadata that actually allows for very last minute insertion at the station, because you don't have to manually find the spot to match it to the insertion order to make sure you're getting the right version of that spot when that version that you might be pulling out was something that was a month old.
So that's interesting. So Nancy, tell me a little bit about, because I'm a digital gal, right?
Yep.
So do we really have the ability to sort of serve television spots, on the fly? Because we sort of buy 2 weeks in advance and we can't optimize, there's not a little flexibility.
We're getting a lot closer. I think when you start thinking about what Ad ID is going to be able to do, when you start thinking about dynamic servers and what that's going to happen, there's got to have to be a lot of investment made in infrastructure. And I think finally, when you start talking to the people who are here at the NAB, they understand that they're going to need to do that. But the other thing that I found interesting in the last couple of days in terms of conversations is also how they're using social to drive what's ending up on their broadcast. Because they're looking at not only the user-generated content, which is sort of a no-brainer, but what are the topics of conversation that are happening in the social universe that they should be covering in, for instance, their news coverage. And when somebody gave me the example of when Hurricane Irene was coming up the coast, one of the local stations in Connecticut automatically jumped on it 5 hours ahead of a lot of the large network broadcasters because they saw it bubbling up in their social universe.
Yeah.
So I think it's a two-way street in terms of how digital is influencing broadcast and how broadcast is influencing digital.
So the last question with which I'd like to sort of leave is I'd like your thoughts on if dynamic third-party ad serving is going to come to television, and if so, if you'd like to sort of, put a date and time out there as to how long from now that's going to be.
I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. But all these predictions that we've always seen, like for instance, this is the year of mobile, that happened for at least 5 years.
10 years.
10 years. I think that for me to sit here and say it's going to be 2013, do I think that there will be pilot programs during 2013? Absolutely. Will it be up and running in 2013? No. We still have a long way to go.
And do you think it's going to be DoubleClick?
That's a prediction that would be, let's see, I could be a very rich woman if I knew the answer to that question. I certainly think they're going to be in the game.
Okay. All right, Nancy, thank you for joining us today. It was really great to have you. I wish you a productive show, and I definitely am really excited to see what's going to happen with Ad ID.
Great.
This whole opportunity to, to buy television advertising and be more informed is exciting, and I thank you for leading it there.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Thanks.